I'm going to talk about lust. After a very holy moment.
They're going to hold you while you talk about lust.
Hold me. Well, this is the fourth installment of the 7 Deadly Sins Summer Sermon Series. I got it up. As Tamara was saying, Marlin kicked things off with his sermon on pride, and hers on, then following hers on envy, and Louis Rojas, greed, and now I will attempt lust. Although the notion of the 7 deadly sins did not originate in the Bible, we will reference the Bible in this sermon. First Catholic and then Protestant religions earnestly attempted to extract the most evil of all transgressions described in the Judeo-Christian writings and to come up with a sort of shorthand list that the masses, the majority of whom were not well versed in Latin or Koine Greek, could follow. They dissected and analyzed the human condition to discover some basic principles by which humankind must live. And thus, ladies and gentlemen, the infamous list of 7 deadly sins was born. And although, in all honesty, it may be more useful to us today if we view this list as a sociological and a psychological snapshot of the medieval mind, rather than a map by which we must live today. But we still can learn from it, especially if we approach it critically and not waste the efforts of our religious forefathers, but rather build upon the foundation updated by our modern frames of references. Now, we Unitarians have a knack for reclaiming words and redefining them so they will work better for us. And so it is that we must take lust back from the grasp of those who can't face it. Back from those who hold lust to be the ultimate evil. We must reclaim it from religious tyranny and political correctness. As one writer put it, we must clean off some of the mud, rescue lust from the echoing denunciation of old men of the deserts, and deliver it from the pallid and envious confessors of Rome and the disgusts of the Renaissance, and to destroy the stocks and the pillories of the Puritans, to separate it from the other things that we know drag it down. We must restore lust. It is a tall task. I realize that the other 6 deadly sins might not be as appealing or as tantalizing as lust, because just about every time someone found out what my topic would be on, they would produce this little seductive smile, followed by a chuckle, followed by a wise comment. Young and old men and women alike all had a similar response, which led me to the conclusion that lust might just be what everybody's been waiting on.
Give us what we're waiting on, Randy.
You see, but I know what it's really about. I've been around the block a couple of times and up a tree. It's because lust is so closely associated with sex. And so if sex you expect, then I will not disappoint you. I remember when I was a young boy watching couples on television doing stuff. And I would ask Mama, what are they doing? And she would say, baby, they're having relations. Took me a long time to figure out what relations was. But we must acknowledge that there are numerous definitions and connotations for the word. But lust is most often defined as that which is in excess, extreme, and untempered passion. It connotes pleasure and a strong sensual desire, a desire that is felt. It is a storm that floods the body, that heats and boils and excites. But we must not resign lust only to sensuality and sexuality. There are other more socially acceptable forms of lust, such as lust for power, lust for gold, lust for possessions, and a lust for life. But for the moment, let's concentrate on the sensual nature of lust. So, I know lust is something people don't like to talk about. We want it to stay in the closet, so to speak, chained in the hidden spaces of the heart and soul, rarely showing its face except for those rare occasions when it has an appetite so insatiable that it can do nothing else but feed itself. Lust is the secret thing that you can't say out loud. You can't even bear to hear it yourself. So you have to whisper it in your beloved's ear. And she says, "You said, do what?" Lust has broken a few windows and far too many hearts. It has entrapped some of the smartest, some of the bravest, and some of the strongest among us have fallen to its prey. Simon Blackburn, in his book on the subject, said that lust is the fly in the ointment, the black sheep of the family, the ill-bred, trashy cousin of upstanding members like love and friendship. It lives on the wrong side of the tracks, lumbers around, elbowing its way much into our lives, and blushes when it comes into company. So why do we flirt with lust? Because we like it. It's dangerous, and we get our pleasure out of escaping its grasp and the consequences of its power. We get strength out of coming up next to disaster or danger and cheating it out of its reward. Unfortunately, there are few of us who occasionally get caught in its snares, and we have to pay the piper. Now that brings me to a story. There was this young miniature poodle who would sit on his master's porch every morning guarding the neighborhood. But this little poodle had an attitude. I call it the little pooch syndrome. You know what I'm talking about. We've all seen that little pipsqueak of a canine whose bark is worse than their bite, who snarls and growls like he wants to tear you a new one. Wants to let everyone know how big and bad he really is. I'm going to have to come off the podium to tell you this story. And so this little poodle every morning would be sitting out on his porch. And it just so happened that an owner would be walking his boxer down the same street. And when that poodle would see that boxer, it would take off that porch and run out there and jump and hit the fence, growling and snarling at the boxer, saying, "I want to get me some of you. Wasn't for this gate, I would let you have it." And that boxer, he was a best in show. He had broad shoulders and he had a strut that was mean, something like this. Oh, yeah. And he wouldn't even break his stride when that little poodle came out there barking at him. He just glanced over and just kept on strutting. But the poodle, with an attitude, one morning waited and said, "Oh, he's coming. I'm going to really get to him." So one morning, it just so happened when he jumped off that porch and he ran out there and hit that gate, it swung open. And he tumbled out there on that sidewalk and looking straight up in the face and the eyes of that boxer. And that boxer said to himself, "There must be a God." He bit into that poodle, twisting and turning and biting and breaking, and was twisting every which way, to finally the owner of the boxer pulled him apart. And the boxer just strutted on about his business. But that poodle limped back into his yard, back onto that porch, broken, bruised, humiliated, and destroyed. And he got back up on top of that porch. He turned around and he wiped his brow. He said, "Whew, I wonder who in the hell left that gate open." See, we have been that little poodle. If not now, then at some point in our lives. Tempting fate, as it were. Most of us have challenged the integrity of the dam which is holding back the flood waters of destruction from our lives. We tempt fate not because we don't know better, but because we do. We tempt fate because it is in our nature to do so. And we like it. We thrive on danger. Most hunters will tell you that it's rarely about the kill. It's about the hunt. Most of us like to live on the edge. So the fact that these are deadly sins does not discourage most of us. And by telling you not to do something actually presents a challenge, if not a license for you to do just that. It's like the wet paint syndrome. The sign that says wet paint, we just want to know how wet it really is. I was in D.C. this past week and visited a Smithsonian art gallery. And there were signs everywhere that says, "Don't touch." And what did I want to do more than anything in the world? I wanted to touch. There's no greater truth to know that when we see something that's not good for us, we want to taste and see how good it really isn't for us. As a species, we should have figured it out long ago that we don't like being told what we can and cannot do. Because the very thing that we are told not to do, we eventually end up doing, and often we will overdo it. So I'm not going to tell you not to lust. I'm going to say lust a little. Throw the die. But when you gamble with the potential loss or hurt of that which you are bound to protect, that is a lust not worth playing. That's a lust out of order, a lust at its worst, when you have crossed the line, when you've got to have something so bad that you are willing to risk beyond your own potential loss. You are risking breaking someone else's heart and potentially your own. That's an impure lust, and you need to recognize and hold it in account. When you can't distinguish between your commitment to be faithful and your need or desire to touch wet paint, that is a lust that we must be aware of. Ask someone why they made what appeared to be the worst decision of their life, and they can't tell you. Something just came over me. I gave in. Yes, you got what you want now. You do not want what you got. The predator has become the prey. He gets trapped by his own arrogance and carelessness. He forgets the rules of the game. He chased after the game, and now the game is chasing after him. This is what happens when you suppress that which is natural, when you try to stop that which is in you, when you do not respect it. It will eventually come out. As Bishop Carlton Pearson says, what you resist persists. Yeah. What's in you will find its way out. What you suppress will progress. It will find a way to live. You can't kill it because it is alive in you, because it's a part of you. It has been my experience when such things that are suppressed finally do surface, they come out ugly. That's when you hear about all the sexual abuse of children, sex trafficking and women and such. But we still have been told to avoid lust at all costs. 1 John 2:16 reads that all that is in the world is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. In another passage, it admonishes its readers to flee youthful lust, to avoid the entrappings that often befall the young at heart. In the New Testament, Apostle Paul, addressing youthful lust, declares it is better to marry than to burn. But we know in our postmodern mentality that marriage does not ensure that there will be no lust, nor should it. Church patriarch and former playboy Augustine himself weighed in on the subject. After his conversion, he taught that lust could be overcome when one utilized sex only for procreation. He went on to imply that one should never seek pleasure at all in sex, and I'm not going to say any more about that. But it's medieval, yes. But it is not just the Bible. Some Eastern religions and philosophies have in their tenets the avoidance of lustful desires. Buddhism encourages the renunciation of sensual pleasures. Sensuous lust is considered one of Buddhism's 5 hindrances. The Buddha taught that lust is a result of desire, which must be abandoned to reach enlightenment. And with all due respect to both Christianity and Buddhism, it's not working. I believe that we preachers and sages need to get out of people's businesses and out of their bedrooms. Because it's not... Because it ain't working for us either. Just look at the news. So in our quest, we have tried to distinguish it from love. Yes, we know the difference between love and lust, or we think we do when we see it. We draw lines of demarcation, separating and distinguishing love from lust, as if there was no connection. As if love never gave birth, or lust rather, never gave birth to love. As if love evolved all on its own with purity of purpose and innocence. But deep inside, we know that lust has always been present. Rarely do we find such a love that is not made more perfect by lust. We've been trying to keep them separate for all our lives, but they are connected. Love has its roots in lust. And according to Blackburn, love receives the world's applause. We wink at young lovers holding hands and kissing in the park. We smile when we see an elderly couple having a romantic candlelight dinner. But lust, however, is furtive, ashamed, and embarrassed. Love pursues the good of the other with self-control, concern, reason, and patience. Lust, however, pursues its own gratification, headlong, impatient of any control, immune to reason. Love thrives on candlelight and conversation, but lust is equally happy in the doorway of a taxi. And its conversation is made up of animal grunts and cries. Love, according to Blackburn, is individual. There is only one unique other, the one doted upon, the single star around whom the lover revolves. But lust will take whatever comes. Lovers gaze into each other's eyes, but lust looks sideways, inventing deceits and stratagems and seductions, sizing up opportunities. Love grows with knowledge and time, courtship, truth, and trust. Lust is the trail of clothing in the hallway. Yet I find it somewhat amusing when people say that they do not lust anymore. I've had a friend who said, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't commit murder, I don't engage in illicit sex, and I don't curse. I never do those things. And I responded to her, no, you probably don't, but you will pay Hollywood to do it for you. She's one of the first ones in the theaters to watch any rated movie. and to then exit the theater a nervous wreck, having perspiration all under her arms, her hair all messed up, and her face contorted. She comes out, "Ooh, that show was a good movie." Even though it technically wasn't us running with the mob or having an affair, so true. She had not murdered anyone. We don't murder, but we're glad to see it when the bad guy gets it. To tell you the truth, sometimes we're happy when the bank robber gets away with the loot. We all think it's innocent entertainment, but the truth is we live vicariously through these images. We're going to have our lust. And it may be on the big screen, but you need to talk about it. What's wrong with us is we don't talk. What's wrong with us is we don't talk about it. We're afraid to talk to our spouses about it. We keep it on the inside rather than deal with some sort of a legitimate void in our life. Lust, sex, desire, and passion, and even love are all sisters and brothers in one family portrait. And the roots of lust run so deep that it's almost instinctive. It's a part of us. It's not going away. It was with Adam and Eve in the garden, and it's going to be with Adam and Steve when they finally are able to marry in all 50 states. I just threw that one in for good luck. But we are ultimately responsible for our own lust, for discovering where the void is and finding avenues to fulfill them. Avenues that are sustainable, healthy, and respectful. Eventually, we will realize that it takes a delicate balance for lust not only to be fun, but also beneficial and healthy. For instance, if your spouse keeps telling you that she's attracted to men in uniform, let me tell you what you should do. Do not ignore her. You should go right over to Top Hat Costume Store. Get you a police uniform and a pair of play handcuffs and stir up some things at home.
You're preaching good, Randy.
You can always stop by Priscilla's or Christie's Toy Box. And a preacher told you that. The problem is that we are reluctant to discuss sex and relationships even with our children, let alone talking about our partners. And our children have to rely on the very dubious sources to figure out what we need to tell them. And unfortunately, they are looking at porn. And that's not a healthy venue to learn about sex. I would never tell you to do that. There would be a miss of preachers, for me as a preacher to tell you to view that stuff, because I realize all the evil that's been done to women and children of the world, so it's not good. But I'm letting you know that our children are seeing the things, and they are learning things that are not sustainable in maintaining long-term relationships. And they often get hurt by the images or the people they encounter simply because we never talked to them about this. We are guilty of not talking about lust and its deeds and what is real. We don't tell them. And now they're looking at Hollywood, the fantasies and the fairy tales to tell them all about what we as parents and leaders should be telling them. Even our own relations, when we have our own relations, are void of lust. And that's the problem. It's the reason why people turn to secret lust on the side, even if it doesn't mean marital infidelity. They're looking for it because it's a necessary part of any relationship or singleness. Here's the point. We all know what lust is. We understand lust is selfish because it seeks its own. I contend that we will remain powerless over lust if we keep attempting to overcome and subdue it. It has a place in our lives. Furthermore, we can learn to appreciate lust. We can appreciate what it has to offer. And now, speaking on appreciation, I got to tell you another story. There was this elderly couple who attended a couples retreat. They had been married for over 55 years. And now, during one of the evening sessions, the facilitator was teaching on the dangers of lust when he noticed the elderly lady giggling. He asked her what was so funny about what he said. Let me get in character. Well, she said as she looked over to her husband, Charlie has been lusting after me for over 55 years. And she giggled. He knows how to stir up the passion. Now, this piqued the curiosity of the other attendees. One person said, please tell us what has kept Charlie lusting after you all these years. And she giggled. No, I shouldn't. No, please tell us, they said. They begged her more. Well, she says, after we have made love, and I know that Charlie has given me all he's got, when we're done, I just look him straight in the eyes, and I appreciation goes a long way. I would tell you it works. And I know that I just saved somebody's relationship. If not saved it, re-energized it. Blackburn suggests what he describes as the Hobbesian or Hobbesian unity, a term he coined after the 17th century philosopher Thomas Hobbes, who wrote, "The appetite which men call lust is a sensual pleasure, but not only that, there is in it also a delight of the minds. For it consisteth of two appetites together, to please and to be pleased. And the delight men take in delighting is not sensual, but a pleasure of joy of the mind, consisting in the imagination of the power they have so much to please." For Blackburn, this was a unity of design which bore no cross purposes, no hidden agendas, mistakes, or deceptions. A lust here is like making music together, a joint symphony of pleasure and response, a pure mutuality. So when I say lust a little, I do so with the most reverence, caution, and care. I want to respect you as an adult who is aware of his or her own weaknesses and strengths when it comes to lust. And I believe that as an adult, you will be accountable for any consequences of your choice that your choices produce. I trust that you are enlightened enough to know your own boundaries. I trust you know the integrity of your gate that keeps you from being chewed on, bitten, and bruised by the very thing you thought that you wanted a piece of. Or to know the difference between a lust that can be sustained in a long-term relationship or the sanctity of your singleness from that which is glamorized on the big screen or the porn hub. Pure lust is closely tied to a feeling of being alive. When you think of it, lust in its pure form consists of two parts. It is the celebration of being alive and the desire to share this experience with others. In a sense, it also is a rebellion against the notion of our own mortality and or stagnation. What form and shape one chooses to rebel against death and stagnation will determine whether their lust becomes detrimental to them and those around them, or whether it will be nurtured into becoming the overall zeal and zest for life. The choice is yours and yours alone. It is the human makeup. It is by design that we have this effect, not defect, without which none of us would be here. So we must learn to respect this awesome force, the force of lust, and learn to direct it in such a ways as to enrich our lives and not destroy them. May it be so. Amen.
Let's sing it now. Love will guide us, peace hath tried us.